What's up, everyone? Today, we're not just revisiting a story. We are peeling back the layers of a legend whose true impact is only now beginning to surface. When we talk about Nipsey Hussle, it is easy to get lost in the headlines, the platinum plaques, and the tragic finality of his departure. But to frame his life as just another hip-hop success story is to miss the point entirely. This is about a man who saw the future from the corner of Crenshaw and Slauson, a visionary who was waging battles against forces far more insidious than the ones fought on the streets. His life wasn't a simple tale of rags to riches. It was a complex strategic campaign against systemic ghosts that have haunted his community for generations. We are diving deeper than the music, beyond the catchphrases that became global movements. This exploration is about understanding the man behind the marathon, the philosopher king of South Central, who was meticulously building an empire of empowerment. He wasn't just making records, he was laying down a blueprint for liberation. He saw the invisible chains of economic disenfranchisement, educational inequality, and cultural suppression, and he decided to break them, not with anger, but with intellect, strategy, and an unwavering belief in his people. This is the story of how one man's journey became a roadmap for an entire generation seeking to reclaim their destiny from the ground up. This narrative goes beyond the well-trodden path of a rapper who made it out of the hood. Instead, it focuses on a man who chose to stay, to reinvest, and to rebuild the very block that raised him. His mission was not to escape his environment, but to transform it into a beacon of opportunity and innovation. He was playing a long game in a world obsessed with instant gratification. He understood that true change required more than just money or fame. It required a fundamental shift in mindset, a deep-seated commitment to ownership, and the courage to challenge the systems designed to keep his community in a state of perpetual struggle. We will unpack the untold layers of Nipsey Hussle's life, examining the crucial ingredients that forged his unique worldview. We will explore how his deep connection to his Eritrean roots gave him a global perspective on Black resistance. We will analyze how his brilliant philosophical mind turned mixtapes into manifestos and clothing stores into tech incubators. This is not just a tribute. It is an investigation into the anatomy of a modern-day revolutionary who fought his war with code, cryptocurrency, and community organizing, leaving behind a legacy that continues to rewrite the future of South Central LA and beyond. Let's get into it. The story of Nipsey Hussle is fundamentally a story of conflict, but not the kind that dominates media portrayals of artists from his background. His primary war was not fought with rivals on the block. It was a calculated intellectual battle against the invisible architecture of oppression. He recognized that the violence and poverty in his community were not inherent flaws, but symptoms of a much larger systemic disease. These were the unseen forces he dedicated his life to combating: the redlining that starved neighborhoods of capital, the educational systems that failed to inspire, and the cultural narratives that glorified self-destruction over collective progress. He wasn't just another voice from the streets. He was a general strategizing on a battlefield most couldn't even see. His approach was revolutionary because it was rooted in a profound redefinition of what hustle truly means. For Nipsey, the hustle was not about personal gain at the expense of others. It was about leveraging every success to create pathways for his community. He saw the corner of Slauson and Crenshaw not as a dead end, but as the epicenter of a new Black Wall Street. He envisioned a world where the young people of his neighborhood were not just consumers of culture and technology, but were its creators and owners. This vision was a direct challenge to the status quo, which profits from the containment and exploitation of communities like South Central LA. We will explore how his 2004 trip to Eritrea completely rewired his understanding of Black identity and power, providing him with a blueprint for nation building that he brought back to the streets of Los Angeles. This journey was more than a vacation. It was an awakening that transformed him from a gang member into a community architect. It armed him with the perspective that the struggles of Crenshaw were not isolated incidents, but part of a global fight for self-determination against colonialism's long shadow. Ultimately, we will investigate why a man so dedicated to peace, progress, and prosperity became a target. Nipsey's work was a profound threat not just to street-level dynamics, but to the larger economic and political structures that depend on the subjugation of Black communities. By proving that a former gang member could become a tech entrepreneur, a real estate mogul, and a community leader, he dismantled the convenient lies that justify systemic neglect. His story is a powerful testament to the idea that one individual, armed with vision and determination, can begin to dismantle a system, forcing us to ask uncomfortable questions about the forces that resist such change. Most people know Nipsey Hussle as the quintessential product of Crenshaw, a figure whose identity was forged in the crucible of South Central Los Angeles. His narrative is deeply intertwined with the Rollin' 60s neighborhood Crips, the mixtape circuit, and the relentless ambition born from street-level economics. But to truly understand the man he would become, we must travel with him back to 2004, to a journey that fundamentally rewired his worldview. At just 19 years old, using money he had saved from his street hustle, Ermias Asghedom embarked on a pilgrimage not to a music industry hub, but to his father's homeland, Eritrea. This trip was far more than a simple family visit or youthful adventure. It was a profound educational experience that laid the very foundation for his marathon philosophy. He arrived in a nation that was itself a testament to endurance, a country that had fought a brutal 30-year war for its independence from Ethiopia, only achieving it in 1991. For a young man from a place where survival was often measured day to day, stepping into a society built on the principle of a generations-long struggle was a seismic shift in perspective. He was not just a tourist, he was the son of a man who had left this very land, and he was there to connect with a history that ran deeper than the concrete of Los Angeles. This was not a story of escaping the hood, but of discovering a source of strength and identity that had been waiting for him across an ocean. The journey itself was an act of deliberate self-investment. While his peers might have used that kind of money to buy a car or expensive jewelry, the typical markers of success in his world, Nipsey chose to invest in his own understanding of self. He stayed for 3 months, immersing himself in the culture, the language, and the political consciousness of a nation of survivors. He walked the streets of Asmara, a city where the architecture told stories of Italian colonialism, and the spirit of the people spoke of fierce independence. This experience provided him with a critical context for his own life, a lens through which the struggles of Crenshaw began to look very different. Before this trip, his world was defined by the immediate pressures and conflicts of his neighborhood. The fight was for respect, for territory, for survival within a system that seemed designed to contain him. In Eritrea, he discovered a different kind of fight, one waged for national sovereignty, cultural preservation, and collective self-determination. This wasn't just a change of scenery, it was a radical expansion of his consciousness. The lessons he learned there about resilience, ownership, and the power of a unified community would become the essential building blocks for the revolutionary work he was destined to undertake back home in the United States. Armed with this transformative Eritrean perspective, Nipsey Hussle's return to Los Angeles marked a pivotal turning point in his life. He made the conscious decision to step back from active gangbanging, a move that was widely misunderstood at the time. This was not a retreat born out of fear or a sudden moral conversion in the traditional sense. Nah, it was a strategic pivot. His experience in a self-sufficient Black nation had revealed a larger, more significant conflict. Why, he reasoned, should he and his peers fight each other over blocks and colors, when the real war was against the invisible economic and political systems designed to keep them all impoverished and powerless? The enemy was not the person on the next street over. It was the architecture of oppression itself. This new understanding transformed his music from mere entertainment into a tool for mass education. His mixtape series was no longer just a catchy, provocative title. It became a profound thesis statement, a critique of the senselessness of internal community violence. The bullets were indiscriminate, wiping out potential leaders, innovators, and family members without any strategic gain. He began to use his lyrics as manifestos, embedding messages of financial literacy, psychological warfare, and long-term strategy into his verses. He was no longer just documenting the struggle. He was actively providing a curriculum for overcoming it, turning his listeners into students of a new school of thought. This evolution from Crip to community architect was a direct result of the Eritrean effect. He saw how a shared struggle could unify a people and decided to apply that nation-building model to his own community of South-Central LA. His focus shifted from territorial disputes to acquiring territory through legitimate means, buying the land, owning the businesses, and controlling the economic ecosystem. He began to see his neighborhood not as a trap to escape from, but as a sovereign state in the making, a place that could be self-reliant and prosperous if its people redirected their energy and resources inward. His hustle became less about personal survival and more about collective uplift. He effectively declared a new kind of war, one fought not with weapons, but with business plans, real estate acquisitions, and technological innovation. He was redrawing the map of his world, redefining what power and influence looked like for someone from his background. This strategic shift confused many, including some of his former associates who saw it as abandoning the code of the streets. But Nipsey was operating on a different level, playing a game of chess while others were still playing checkers. He had seen what a unified, self-determined people could accomplish, and he dedicated the rest of his life to bringing that vision to the corner of Slauson and Crenshaw. When Nipsey Hussle said, "The marathon continues," he wasn't just talking about music. He was redefining what success meant in hip-hop. Instead of chasing quick wins, Nipsey championed patience, endurance, and building real value over time. He turned every move, from selling $100 mixtapes to building a loyal fan base, into a lesson in long-term thinking and self-worth. His marathon wasn't about headlines. It was about legacy, showing his community that the finish line is just the start of something greater. Nipsey's vision stretched far beyond music. He saw technology as the new frontier for empowerment. With the Marathon Clothing Smart Store and his partnership with Idris Sandhu, he brought augmented reality and digital ownership to Crenshaw. Vector 90, his co-working space, was a launchpad for local talent, teaching kids to code and dream bigger. When investors doubted his neighborhood, Nipsey invested his own money, proving innovation could thrive anywhere. He built a bridge from South Central to Silicon Valley, showing the world that the marathon means building your own road. As Nipsey's influence grew, so did the scrutiny. He was reportedly watched by law enforcement for his economic activism. His push for black-owned businesses, cryptocurrency, and financial independence was seen as a threat to the status quo. Nipsey wasn't just building businesses. He was building a movement, challenging systems that profited from black disenfranchisement. The marathon got harder, but Nipsey kept running, fighting for freedom on every front. While Nipsey battled systemic forces from the outside, he also faced a more nuanced and complicated resistance from within his own world. His evolution from a Rollin' 60s Crip to a global entrepreneur and community architect was a profound challenge to the established identity of gang culture. By demonstrating that a respected figure from the streets could become a successful CEO, tech investor, and real estate developer, he was inadvertently exposing the lie that a life of crime was the only path available. His success was a powerful testament to the potential that lay dormant in his community. But for some, it was also an uncomfortable mirror. Some members of his own set and other gangs reportedly viewed his transformation with suspicion. According to insiders, he received warnings along the lines of, "You're making us look bad." This sentiment stemmed from a complex place. On one hand, his success brought pride to the neighborhood. On the other, it dismantled the justifications for the status quo. If Nipsey could pivot from the block to the boardroom, it implied that others could too, which challenged the deeply entrenched identities and power structures that had governed street life for decades. His message of empowerment was a direct threat to those who derived their influence from the very hopelessness he sought to eradicate. His activism was a direct challenge to the prison industrial complex, an entity that relies on a steady supply of inmates from neighborhoods like Crenshaw. By working to broker peace between rival gangs and providing alternative pathways to success through education and entrepreneurship, Nipsey was effectively cutting off the supply chain. His work wasn't just charity. It was a form of preventative medicine that threatened a multi-billion-dollar industry. He was proving that poverty and systemic neglect, not inherent criminality, were the true drivers of gang violence. By addressing the root causes, he was rendering the symptoms and the systems that profit from them obsolete. This internal pushback represented one of the most tragic fronts in his invisible war. The very people he was fighting for were, in some ways, conditioned by the system to resist the change he represented. He was a living paradox, a figure of immense street credibility who was actively working to make that form of credibility irrelevant. He was asking his community to trade the short-term power of the gun for the long-term power of the business plan. This radical proposition, while visionary, created friction and misunderstanding. It placed him in a precarious position, navigating the delicate politics of the streets while simultaneously waging war against the institutional giants that loomed over them all. The afternoon of March 31st, 2019, began like any other Sunday at the Marathon clothing store. It was a hub of community activity, a place where Nipsey Hussle was not a distant celebrity, but a constant, accessible presence. He was there not for a scheduled appearance, but simply to be among his people, helping a friend get new clothes before his release from prison. It was in this familiar setting that his final fateful conversation took place. The man who would end his life, Eric Holder Jr., was not a stranger, but a known figure from the neighborhood, an aspiring rapper who had been part of the same Rollin' 60s world. The interaction that preceded the tragedy was brief, but it was layered with the complex social dynamics of the streets. Media narratives quickly simplified the motive to a personal dispute, a classic case of disrespect leading to violence. Holder, having heard a rumor that he was a snitch, the most inflammatory accusation in street culture, allegedly felt his reputation was on the line. But to reduce this moment to a simple argument is to ignore the deeper currents at play. Nipsey's conversation with Holder was reportedly calm and measured. He was not confrontational. Rather, he was addressing the rumor with the intention of de-escalation, a role he had embraced as a community leader and peacekeeper. This was not a heated argument between two rivals, but an attempt by a leader to manage a volatile situation within his own community. This interaction symbolizes the immense challenge Nipsey faced daily. He was attempting to impose a new code of conduct, one of dialogue, accountability, and resolution, onto an environment still governed by an old, violent code. The accusation of snitching is a powerful tool within that old system, a trigger word designed to provoke an immediate and deadly response, leaving no room for conversation. Nipsey's attempt to defuse this verbal bomb with reason was a direct application of his new philosophy. He was trying to elevate the consciousness of his environment to show that disputes could be handled with maturity rather than with violence, a lesson he had been teaching for years. Tragically, this final lesson was not absorbed. Holder's reaction was not one of reflection, but of regression. He chose to revert to the old code, the very cycle of violence Nipsey was working so hard to break. The final moments of Nipsey Hussle's life were not a random act of aggression, but a stark illustration of the war he was fighting. It was a clash between two ideologies, the forward-thinking, constructive mindset of the marathon and the destructive, reactive mindset of the street's old guard. In that moment, the old guard tragically and temporarily won. The conversation was not just a disagreement. It was the final fatal collision of two opposing worlds. The events that followed the brief conversation between Nipsey Hussle and Eric Holder Jr. dismantle any notion that this was a crime of passion or a spontaneous act of violence. Security footage and witness testimonies paint a picture of cold, calculated intent. After leaving the parking lot, Holder did not simply flee in anger. Instead, he drove away, armed himself with 2 handguns, and then deliberately returned to the Marathon store. This was not a sudden, emotional outburst. It was a premeditated decision, a conscious choice to escalate a verbal dispute into a fatal attack. The time that elapsed between the conversation and the shooting provided a clear window for reflection, a chance to reconsider. Holder chose not to. This element of premeditation is what elevates the tragedy beyond a simple gang violence narrative. Many who followed Nipsey's work closely find it difficult to believe that a minor accusation, even one as serious as snitching, could be the sole motivator for such a calculated assassination. This has led to widespread speculation and conspiracy theories, suggesting that Holder may have been a pawn in a much larger game. Was he manipulated? Was he encouraged by others who saw Nipsey's rising political and economic influence as a threat? While there is no definitive proof of a wider conspiracy, the context of Nipsey's work makes these questions difficult to dismiss entirely. Consider the timing of his death. Nipsey Hussle was just days away from a crucial meeting with LAPD Chief Michael Moore and Police Commissioner Steve Soboroff. The topic of discussion was not trivial. It was about finding concrete solutions to gang violence and exploring ways to help the police better understand and serve the community. He was bridging the gap between two long-standing adversaries. He was using his credibility on the streets to broker a peace that had seemed impossible for decades. His murder silenced a key voice at a critical moment, effectively sabotaging a landmark meeting that could have led to tangible, positive change in police-community relations. Whether Holder acted alone or was influenced by others, the result was the same. A powerful force for peace and progress was eliminated. The act itself was a brutal rejection of everything Nipsey stood for. He was killed in the very sanctuary he had built, a place he intentionally kept accessible to his community as a symbol of hope and ownership. The calculated nature of the crime suggests it was more than just personal. It was an attack on the movement he was building. It was an attempt to prove that even a king could be taken down on his own turf, a violent message sent to anyone else who dared to follow in his footsteps. The bullets that struck Nipsey Hussle on that Sunday afternoon did more than just take a life. They struck a devastating blow to a meticulously crafted, decade-long vision. His murder was not just the death of a man, it was the interruption of a blueprint, the careful plan he called the Marathon. This was not just a collection of business ideas. It was a comprehensive strategy designed to make the Crenshaw community economically self-sufficient and technologically advanced. He was in the middle of executing complex real estate deals, launching tech initiatives, and building political alliances that were years in the making. His sudden absence created a power vacuum that immediately threatened to unravel his life's work. In the immediate aftermath of his death, the fragility of his burgeoning empire became painfully clear. Many of the deals and partnerships he had personally forged were built on his unique combination of vision, charisma, and street credibility. Without him at the helm to navigate the complex worlds of finance, politics, and community trust, momentum stalled. According to reports, some investors who had been drawn in by Nipsey's singular vision grew hesitant and pulled out. Projects that were on the cusp of breaking ground were put on indefinite hold. The system he was fighting against had found its most effective weapon, the removal of the general leading the charge, causing chaos and uncertainty among the ranks. The most significant project endangered by his death was the redevelopment of the Slauson and Crenshaw Plaza. This was the crown jewel of his Marathon blueprint, a plan to replace a simple strip mall with a 6-story residential and commercial hub called Nipsey's Village. It was set to include low-income housing, a grocery store, and his beloved Marathon clothing store, creating a self-contained ecosystem of community empowerment. With him gone, the intricate process of navigating city permits, securing final funding, and managing construction became exponentially more difficult. The blueprint was intact, but the architect was gone, and his loss was a direct hit to the community's hopes for revitalization from within. The interruption of this blueprint was perhaps the greatest tragedy of all. Nipsey's death represented the loss of immense potential, a future that he had not only imagined, but was actively building brick by brick. He was playing the long game, and his plan was designed to unfold over years, creating generational wealth and opportunity. His murder was a calculated disruption of that timeline, a violent attempt to reset the clock on Black progress in south-central Los Angeles. It served as a brutal reminder that a visionary can lay the most perfect plans, but in a system resistant to change, the marathon can be violently and tragically interrupted. The forces that sought to end Nipsey Hussle's movement with his death achieved the opposite. Instead of silencing his message, his tragic passing acted as a global amplifier, transforming the marathon continues from a Los Angeles mantra into an international creed for resilience. The system may have tried to bury him, but they fundamentally misunderstood what he represented. They didn't know he was a seed, one whose roots had already spread far beyond the concrete of Crenshaw. His legacy was never confined to a single man. It was an idea, a philosophy of empowerment that, once planted, could not be contained by geography or even by death. The marathon he started did not end on that fateful March day. It simply passed the baton to millions around the world. This globalization of his message is most powerfully seen in his father's homeland, Eritrea. In the streets of Asmara, massive, reverent murals of Nipsey Hussle now stand alongside portraits of the nation's Revolutionary War heroes. He has been posthumously adopted as one of their own, a son of the soil who embodied the Eritrean spirit of self-reliance and long-term struggle, even from across the ocean. Local teenagers, who may have never heard his music while he was alive, now quote his lyrics about entrepreneurship and perseverance as if they were proverbs passed down through generations. His story has become a part of their national narrative, a testament to the idea that the fight for self-determination is a universal one. Back in the United States, his influence solidified into a movement that transcended music and culture. People from all walks of life, from corporate executives and tech entrepreneurs to teachers and community activists, began to publicly adopt the marathon mindset. They saw in his story a blueprint for navigating their own challenges with grace, strategy, and an unwavering commitment to a higher purpose. His name became synonymous with principled entrepreneurship and authentic community leadership. The marathon was no longer just about building a business. It was about building a better life, a stronger community, and a more just world, one calculated step at a time. Ultimately, Nipsey's legacy proved that a message rooted in truth and authenticity has an unstoppable momentum. His physical absence only magnified his spiritual presence. He became a martyr for a cause much larger than himself, the cause of economic freedom, intellectual liberation, and unwavering hope in the face of systemic opposition. The seeds he planted in the hard soil of south-central Los Angeles have broken through the concrete, and their blossoms are now seen across the globe. He proved that while you can kill a revolutionary, you can never kill the revolution. The marathon, as he promised, continues on a global stage. In the wake of Nipsey Hussle's death, his dedicated team, led by his brother Samuel "Black Sam" Asghedom, faced an immense challenge: how to continue a marathon without its lead runner. Their answer was to lean into the very principles Nipsey championed: innovation, ownership, and forward thinking. They looked to the digital frontier he was so fascinated by and brought one of his most ambitious visions to life. Posthumously, his team launched a groundbreaking NFT-based membership program tied to his album. This was not a sentimental cash grab. It was the execution of a plan Nipsey himself had been developing, a way to deepen the connection with his most loyal supporters and give them a real stake in his legacy. This initiative effectively transformed his fan base from passive consumers into active shareholders. By purchasing these digital collectibles, fans were not just buying a piece of memorabilia. They were investing in the marathon ecosystem, gaining access to exclusive content and experiences. This move was a masterclass in Web3 principles, fulfilling Nipsey's dream of using blockchain technology to create a new, decentralized model of artist-fan engagement. It was the ultimate expression of his proud two-pay strategy, creating a direct economic relationship that cut out the industry middlemen and empowered both the creator and the community. He had always wanted to give his people ownership, and now, even in death, he was. This project established the marathon as a pioneering Black-owned Web3 platform, placing his legacy at the forefront of a technological revolution. It was a direct continuation of the work he started with the Marathon Smart Store, using technology as a tool to educate and empower. The NFT launch served as a practical lesson in digital assets, smart contracts, and the future of intellectual property for a community that has historically been the last to benefit from technological shifts. His team was not just preserving his memory, They were actively pushing his vision forward, ensuring that his name would be synonymous with innovation for years to come. Ultimately, this digital continuation of the marathon is one of his most potent legacies. It proves that the blueprint he created was strong enough to survive its architect. By turning his fans into stakeholders, his team ensured that the economic engine he built would continue to run, generating value and opportunity for his family and his community. It was a brilliant strategic move that honored his past work while boldly stepping into the future he so clearly foresaw. The marathon continues, not just in spirit, but on the blockchain, creating a permanent, decentralized, and community-owned tribute to his genius. While Nipsey Hussle's life was an unfinished symphony, the notes he wrote continue to be played, arranged, and expanded upon by those he inspired. His most tangible legacy projects are thriving, serving as living monuments to his vision. Vector 90, the co-working space and STEM incubator he co-founded, has become a vital hub of innovation in South Central LA. It now successfully trains over 1,000 young people every year in skills like coding, graphic design, and entrepreneurship. It is the realization of his dream to cultivate Black Mark Zuckerbergs from his own neighborhood, providing the resources and mentorship needed to bridge the gap between Crenshaw and Silicon Valley. The space is a testament to his belief in the untapped genius of his community. The future of the Crenshaw and Slauson Plaza, the very ground he fought so hard to own, is also secure. After years of navigating the complexities he left behind, his family and partners are moving forward with the redevelopment plan. The plaza is being rebuilt as Nipsey's Village, a multi-story mixed-use complex that will serve as the physical embodiment of his philosophy. It will feature affordable housing lofts, a community theater, and a new permanent home for the Marathon clothing store. This project is a direct defiance of gentrification, a powerful statement that community development can and should serve the people who already live there, creating a beacon of hope and a model for urban development worldwide. These projects represent the continuation of his blueprint, proof that the seeds he planted are indeed growing in concrete. They are more than just buildings or programs. They are ecosystems of opportunity designed to create a ripple effect of positive change for generations to come. Each student who learns to code at Vector 90, and each family that finds affordable housing in Nipsey's Village, is a continuation of his marathon. His work has created a sustainable framework for empowerment, ensuring that his impact will not fade over time, but will instead compound, growing stronger with each passing year. He built a foundation strong enough for others to build upon. The system tried to bury him, to halt his progress and make an example of him, but they failed to understand the nature of his work. He wasn't building a kingdom dependent on a king. He was planting a garden that could flourish even in his absence. His legacy is not a static monument to be admired from afar, but a living, breathing movement that invites participation. He left behind the ultimate open-source blueprint for community uplift. And now, it is up to everyone who was touched by his message to pick up the tools and continue the work. The marathon was never about one man finishing a race. It was about inspiring a generation to run it together. In the final analysis, the story of Nipsey Hussle transcends the boundaries of a biography. It evolves into a timeless parable for the modern age. His life was not merely a cautionary tale about the dangers faced by a visionary, but a powerful and enduring call to action. To view his death as a tragic, definitive end is to fundamentally misinterpret the core tenet of his entire philosophy. Nipsey Hussle was not building a monument to himself. He was laying down the first leg of a relay race, a marathon designed to be run collectively, with the baton passed from one generation to the next. His journey meticulously laid out a blueprint, exposing the invisible wars of economic disenfranchisement and systemic neglect, while simultaneously providing the tools to fight back with intelligence, ownership, and unwavering perseverance. He showed the world that a hustler from the streets could master the language of venture capital, that a rapper could architect a technological revolution from his own block, and that a former gang member could become the most formidable opponent to gentrification. Nipsey's legacy is not simply in the music he made or the businesses he built, but in the paradigm shift he engineered. He challenged us to redefine our understanding of wealth, power, and community. He forced us to look beyond the superficial markers of success and to focus on the long-term, foundational work of building institutions, owning our own narratives, and investing in our own people. His life serves as a permanent question to society. What systems are in place that make such a positive force a target? The question he leaves us with is not whether his death was a tragic end, but rather whether we will allow it to be the spark that ignites a broader movement. Will we be passive admirers of his journey, or will we become active participants in the marathon he started? His work was never about one man achieving the impossible. It was about proving what is possible for an entire community when it decides to redirect its energy toward a common goal. He provided the strategy, the inspiration, and the proof of concept. The responsibility now falls to those who were inspired by his message to pick up the baton and continue the race, to finish the projects he started, and to apply his principles in their own neighborhoods and industries. Therefore, the story of Nipsey Hussle is ultimately a story of beginnings, not endings. He was a general in a war most of us are only now beginning to recognize we are fighting. He opened our eyes to the battlefield and handed us the weapons of education, ownership, and collective action. The marathon is not over. It has simply entered a new phase. It continues in every young entrepreneur who opens a business in their own community, in every coder who emerges from a STEM program in the inner city, and in every individual who chooses long-term strategy over short-term gratification. The marathon continues through us.